Good afternoon and welcome to Opinion Journal. I'm Mary Kissel. Syria has reportedly used chemical weapons against its own people. What are the consequences if the U.S. doesn't respond? Editorial board member Matt Kaminski is here. Matt, President Obama has used some really strong rhetoric against the Assad regime, but he hasn't done very much. Is there any sign that this is going to change now that this quote-unquote red line has been crossed?
Well, he's kind of, in a way, sort of boxed himself in because he said that, the red line, this is a game changer if they use chemical weapons.
Well, first it was if they move chemical weapons,
right?
We've
so
had
sort of move from there.
several red lines.
I think it's now, it's a very blurry red line and slightly moved over.
Like
last week
line.
the U.S. has finally acknowledged that the French, the British, the Israelis are right, that chemical weapons have been used in Syria, but they really didn't commit to much of anything. They basically said, oh, we have to investigate, what really happened because we're not sure who exactly may have used the sarin gas in a village near Aleppo, which is a city in Syria. We may want to send the UN in to investigate, which is really a recipe for actually doing very little of anything. So I don't see necessarily that he is going to move much beyond what he's already done, which is provide non-lethal aid, nor do I see really pressure, especially from his own camp, to get him to do something differently.
So non-lethal aid, that doesn't change the equation at all?
I don't think so. They've basically, there was a meeting last week and there were some positive steps forward. We're going to give, the U.S. meeting is going to give more directly aid to the Syrian rebels that we like, meaning not Al-Qaeda rebels, but the more stuff we sort of, that we are confident isn't going to fall into the hands of Islamists. We're also going to coordinate better with the Saudis and the Qataris who've been sending a lot of arms. We want to make sure that those arms don't end up with something called the Al-Nusra Front, which is basically the Al-Qaeda front in Syria. But since we are not doing anything which is a no-fly zone, setting up humanitarian corridors, or arming the rebels directly, that would be a true game changer. I don't think this White House is willing to go there.
But Matt, first of all, what does that mean for the stability of the region if Syria falls to either jihadists or if China and Russia successfully prop up Bashar al-Assad? What does that mean for our allies and for our bases nearby?
Look, we've argued, they have argued in the White House that if we arm the rebels or we create a no-fly zone, we're going to have a terrible civil war in our hands. We're going to have millions of refugees streaming across the borders and tens of thousands of people being killed. That's exactly what happened when we haven't intervened. And unfortunately, the cost of intervention now is much higher than it would have been, let's say, 18 months ago. It is harder now to stop the war. It is harder to put in place a plan for what happens after Assad. So because we've waited so long, in a sense, it actually becomes more difficult to do anything. But I think the argument still is that it is in our interest, for Syria not to be an Iranian proxy in the Middle East, and for someone else to be in charge of in Damascus. I think, by the way, that you've already had 70,000 people killed. So this chemical weapons red line is kind of a weird line to me. I think there's one argument about, okay, you don't want those weapons going to Hezbollah or to Al-Qaeda. But because people are being killed in this way instead of a different way, should not necessarily be the reason why we change our calculus. We have a bad policy. We've had a bad policy from the beginning, and I think that should be the case for why it should be changed, because that policy is obviously not working.
Matt, what signal does this send to Iran, to North Korea, to China, to other regimes that are testing the United States right now? About a minute left.
Well, this is actually the issue with the red line, and that's really the problem with it. If you declare a red line and then you keep moving it or keep blurring it, you've basically had your bluff called. And to have the one superpower in the world today seem feckless and weak is very dangerous, because you're also dealing with other problems down the road, with Iran that wants to go nuclear, with North Korea, which is already nuclear and is threatening us. So I think that's really the other danger here, separate from the question of what's the best way to get out of Syria.
A feckless policy, danger in the Middle East. Editorial board member Matt Kaminski.
All good
Thanks
news.
for being with us.